Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of La Coalición, and Happy New Year to everybody. We're filming this in the middle of January, but we're hoping that everybody had a nice break and a Happy New Year. Jessica, how was your New Year?
It was good. Happy New Year's, everybody. I had a good time. I went out. I was exhausted, but I was also cold, but I also had fun.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, here at ICIJ, we took a couple of weeks off for the break, for the holidays, and now we're back at work, and there's so much to do. And there's a lot of updates that we want to share with you all so that we can all stay tuned to the work for 2024. And I want to start off with a really important update from last week. Governor Newsom, announced his budget. And unfortunately, there were some things in the budget that were cut and some things that weren't included in there that impact the work that we do and the immigrant
hmm
community. So we'll get right into it. One of those things is the $150 million for emergency services and rapid response at the border. That was cut, and this is an election year, which we'll touch on. And obviously, the border and immigration in general is going to be a very discussed topic over the airwaves, over mainstream media for the rest of the year. And there's going to be a lot of focus on the border here in California and Mexico. So it's a shame that that money isn't there anymore for our San Diego partners to do the work that they do. Amazing work, humanitarian support. But it looks like we're going to have to find ways to support them. So I think that's one way where here in the IE we can support is to, we did a couple of donation drives last year. We can do that again this year and find other ways to support our partners down there.
Yeah, and I know that yesterday in the general meeting we were talking about this precise topic, and we have some partners in the San Diego area that we're looking for volunteers and help, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can tag that on the bottom if you are or have family members in the San Diego area
Yeah.
and want to be part of this campaign or this support.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of need there. Obviously, there's a couple of open air detention centers, which we'll touch on detention centers a little bit more, but folks are just being left out in the desert in Jacumba and other parts of San Diego where they're sleeping and doing everything they do in a daily life while they wait to be released by Border Patrol. So we'll hopefully have more support from the IE coming down to San Diego. Something else that was somewhat included in the budget, but we still have to fight for, is the money that we got for HEAL, which stands for Healthy Economies Adapting to Last. If folks remember last year, we got a budget victory. We secured $5 million, the first of its kind to secure $5 million to incentivize cities like Adelanto to shut down their detention facility in return for some of the money to retrain their workforce into something that's more sustainable, into hopefully renewable energy, green energy, jobs that are going to be there for generations to come. There is a huge threat to that pot of money being cut this year
Yeah.
in June. So our partners with the Dignity Not Detention Coalition are working really hard from now until June to make sure that that $5 million is still there. We're going to ask for a little bit more, but we're going to fight for what we have so that Adelanto can apply for the funds in June. So fingers crossed. Yeah.
That's a lot of work that is coming down pretty soon.
Yeah, it is. And we're taking a little trip to Sacramento next week to talk about Safety Net for All, which is another huge budget proposal that was not included in this year's budget. We did an episode on Safety Net for All last year as well with our partners from Warehouse Workers.
hmm
And unfortunately, it was not included. It's a pretty big budget ask, $270 million. But it's a very much needed service to close that gap of inequality in California for immigrants who have been working and providing into unemployment benefits all this time, but they themselves cannot touch into the unemployment benefits that everybody else has access to. So this is a huge inequality gap that we need to fix, and we're still going to do everything that we can to ask the governor and the legislators to include the $270 million into the budget so that excluded workers have the right to access unemployment benefits. So that's another deep struggle that we're going to be working with our partners all up and down the state. But this could potentially be a multi-year campaign. We hope that we can get a victory here this year in June, but we're also preparing for potentially a couple years down the line too. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work coming up, but I would encourage everybody to listen to the episode we have on Safety Net for All. It was a great episode where you can find firsthand experience and firsthand accounts of what this bill would do and how impactful it would be for people that are directly affected.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But one of the things that was thankfully not touched and left as is health for all. So
Yes.
health for all, if folks don't know, I don't know if we did an episode on it, but we should probably do an episode later this year on it because this health for all initiative will close the gap for people that are undocumented that they could apply for Medi-Cal if they're in the ages of 26 and 49 years old. So before Health for All, there was a gap of that age group that wasn't able to apply for Medi-Cal. Now they can. They still have to meet the eligibility requirements, but at least their immigration status doesn't.
Does not qualify as a requirement.
Right, right. So now most of our community within that age group can qualify for Medi-Cal. So hopefully people are taking advantage of it. We had a prometora here yesterday signing people up when we were doing the diaper giveaway and the, everything else for the babies that we do here. So we're going to be doing more of that awareness outreach so that folks can start applying for Medi-Cal within that age group.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool because I know seeing a lot of headlines and following this campaign for a while, but the headlines that were coming through lately were pretty cool to see. California being the first state to offer healthcare to the majority of the undocumented community, right? So that's pretty cool to see it from the start and get to this point where we see that headline.
Yeah, I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a multi-year campaign, and we're really happy with the results so far. And we have to fight for the other gaps like safety net and heal, but we're gonna get there eventually with the community support. But I'm gonna hand it off to you, Jessica. If we can get a little bit of an update now on the street vending work in the Inland Empire in general. Yeah, so take it away.
So as many of you may know, we closed out the year with some very high stakes. Fontana in particular has retained a lot of attention on the street vending issue because of their ordinance that continues to aim to criminalize street vendors in all aspects. So at this point, we are, we're strategizing with partners. We're strategizing internally, and we're taking feedback from community members, from vendors, to see how we're going to continue addressing this issue. We lead our street vending work with the direction of the community first and foremost, and what the vendors want to engage in. So, at this moment, we're looking into what we're gonna continue doing. But just as an update, at this point, Fontana is retaining that ordinance. There are no amendments at this moment. So at this point, as a street vendor, you still run the risk of being, cited with a misdemeanor. If you interfere with the officer citing you for something. And so practically, to make it brief, in Fontana, if you're a street vendor, you're going to be given a citation for something, and you interfere with that process, that's when you are in danger of receiving that misdemeanor, and that's when Fontana can issue that misdemeanor. It's all very tricky. It's all very unethical and very wishy-washy, and barely has legal grounds to do what they're doing. But we're not done, and so we're going to continue working with this. Overall, there's a lot of movement on street vending throughout the state. A lot of cities are moving towards, fighting the implementation of bad ordinances like Fontana. So I'm looking forward to this year to engage with other partner organizations throughout the state, to learn from them and to keep moving forward and pushing equity in these ordinances.
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge battle that's here in the IE that could potentially have repercussions all up and down the state if other cities look at what Fontana is doing and they want to replicate what they're doing. It's going to put a lot of stress into the work that you guys are doing and the street vendors as well and their families too. Criminalizing never works, and this is a policy that comes from that stem of thinking, and we see it in homelessness. We see it in other avenues of life, right, where they continue to police and criminalize folks for just trying to get their daily bread.
Criminalizing poverty has never been an effective way to address poverty. So, let alone the ethical, the ethical or lack of ethical perspective in there.
And it leads to the same issues that we've been seeing over and over again, like more bloated police departments, more funding going towards them, and the solutions are even just getting bigger and bigger. The problems are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, but we also see on the resistance side, HEAL, safety net for all, health for all, shut down Adelanto. So, they got to play, we're going to play too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thought that we had in mind with HEAL was we have to use their language and their narrative against them. And that's kind of where we came up with HEAL. It was always about jobs, right? It was always about bringing new jobs to the community because companies weren't coming into the high desert, into San Diego and parts of the Central Valley where we have our detention centers in California. So we said, well, what if we were able to get you jobs there with the funding from the state? And it seems to have a real interest from the folks that live in those communities, in Adelanto in particular, now that we can pivot over to the work that we're doing there. The city has been really interested in applying for the HEAL funding. The federal government obviously has their own plans, and they've been playing this kick the can down the road game with us with the imminent shutdown of Adelanto that was supposed to happen on December 19th of last year. We were all excited. We went up there. But, I feel like the people that have been doing this work for a really long time, it was like you had to pinch them, right? Like we were talking to in Alaska, and I just kind of thinking about like all the decade plus work that has gone into shutting down Adelanto. Like, is this really happening? And then, ICE and DHS, they decided to kick the can down the road until February 19th. And then they kicked the can down the road a little bit more until June now. So essentially that's kind of where we're at, folks. The federal government has decided to push the decision making a little bit further down the year. The problem is that they can continue to doing that until December. That's when the contract is up, so they can continue to kick it all the way down to December. But in the meantime, we have been lobbying really hard with the Congress. Representative Judy Chu has led the campaign to call for the shutdown of Adelanto now, because it's basically empty. There's 6 people there.
Yeah.
There's been 6 people there for a really long time. And on top of that, they're still getting sick. Like two people that were in solitary, they got COVID. And
how do you get COVID in solitary?
Exactly, right? And it's because of the staff.
Yeah.
And so essentially, Geo Group isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. We know that. But they're arguing. Recently, they put out some statements, and so did some unions too. I'm gonna throw some shade at them too.
Let's say that again.
Yeah, saying that the work that they're doing is essential, and it's like top line, the best work that could be done for people that are coming from third world countries who don't have Medicare, who don't have healthcare in those parts of the world. But they're getting COVID nonstop, left and right, even when they're in solitary confinement. So is this really healthcare? Is this really care that our immigrant community needs? And they're also being criminalized too. So.
And is that a quality union job? It is not.
Right. Exactly.
So it goes so.
Yeah. So I feel like in this space, and also like in the environmental justice space, we always run into unions sometimes, and we don't always see eye to eye. But the whole idea around HEAL too was this is kind of like that middle of the road. Like, hey, we're trying to understand it from your eyes too, as a worker, as a laborer. We know that the job is what's putting food on your table. But with the funding here, we can play around with to make sure that you do have a job after Adelanto closes, and you don't have to be part of the system that criminalizes people and also gets them really sick too, not just from COVID, but from the water, from the food, and from the overall conditions of abuse. So we are going to be doing a lot of work this year on putting pressure not just on Congress, but also on some of the unions that have been against the shutdown of Adelanto for their own reasons, for keeping their employees there. But like you said, those jobs aren't quality jobs. We've heard so much testimony left and right from people that have been there, released, and they talk about the medical abuse that happened, the lack of medical care, the lack of medicine that they received in there. Here's a Tylenol for your migraine. Here's a Tylenol for everything, essentially, you know? So it's not a solution, and we're hoping that we can work with the unions involved so they can be part of the solution with us.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, I was there on December 19 when it was, the press conference, and what I walked out of there with is that the energy hasn't changed. Like, people are disappointed. We cope, we talk, we in community, have feelings about it. But at the end of the day, at the end of that press conference, everybody was ready to hit the ground running again.
Yeah.
So the fight doesn't end, and the fact that they're kicking the can, like you said, it shows that they're running on fumes.
Yeah.
And no matter what, like, it's ending for them, and I think that on its own is just a huge win, that they have to resource to the very, like, last resource, I guess, that they have to, have the very last option, that's what they're running on. And so,
Yeah.
the end is imminent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
Definitely. In the background of all of this is the Biden administration, and of course, this is an election year, and immigration policy is always something that's put on the mainstream media for jousting between both political parties, and Biden and the Democratic Party right now are conceding a whole lot of things to the Republicans in order to get money for the Ukraine and to fund more genocide in Palestine. So there's a whole lot of things happening right now within the next couple of weeks where the Senate can pass a certain package, the House can play with it, but essentially there's a lot of conceding being done by the Biden administration on immigration. They could codify a lot of the Trump era immigration policy that was so bad, and this could potentially be even worse. Like, there's experts in immigration policy saying that, like, what Biden and the Democrats are doing is worse than what Trump did during his administration. So take that for what you will. In November, when you get your ballot.
Great segue.
I'm not going to tell you how to vote on that, because a lot of our community members aren't even able to vote too.
But they can talk to their kids, for example, who are of voting age and of voting capacity. Having the ability to vote is a privilege that not everybody has. And so, encourage you, like Eddie said, to vote according to your values.
Yeah.
That's all we can say, like, define your values and, like, really vote for it. If you're not up for genocide and you're not chill with that, then don't vote for someone who is in full support of that. Don't vote for,
Speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, speaking of all this policy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of policymakers on the ballot this November. It's a presidential election, up and down the ballot, from local, county, state, to obviously presidential. If you want to learn about who to vote for, it won't be on this podcast. We're not going to tell you who you should vote for, but we have laid out some issues here that impact the immigrant community. And some of these people may or may not be aligned with our immigrant values that we care so much for. So there's a lot to be discussed, because it's going to be on the media and on the news cycle nonstop. The so-called caravans, the surge, the dehumanizing language that's used to talk about people coming to the United States for a better living, usually escaping genocide potentially in Palestine or other parts of the country.
In other Native communities and other indigenous communities in South America, Central America, and everywhere.
Climate refugees. There are a growing population of refugees, asylum seekers that sometimes end up in Adelanto because our country can only figure out how to criminalize people and not actually provide humanitarian support for people that we bomb their countries.
And a lot of times I've had, like, family members or friends that are, trying to get into, to be more politically active. And people will ask me, like, well, how do you vote? Who do I vote for? How do I find out who I want to vote for? And the best advice that would be, I give to people is look at the issues that matter to you and start there. If safety net for all matters to you because you are someone directly impacted or have family that are directly impacted, or just simply think that, it's the right thing to do, start with that policy and see who supports that policy. That's what I would say, because we do get a lot of questions of who do I vote for? How do I know who's a good politician and a good representative and a good city council member? Look at the issues that they support. Look what they speak out against. Look what they stay quiet on. And I would say start there. Start taking down names of people that you are seeing standing up for your values.
Do you want to know my values? I'm actually wearing a my
Anti-fascist social club.
yeah. So I'm literally wearing it for this
Yeah.
episode so that I wouldn't have to say it. But when I look at the ballot, that's
Yeah.
who I.
Yep.
Yeah. Depending on who is and who's not.
Yeah. And I mean, it takes long. I think it takes a long time. It takes a lot of time invested that a lot of times we don't have because we work, we
That's
have
true.
family, we have all that.
That's true.
So I think
It's not easy.
it's not easy. So my niece is 17 and is already like freaking out about who she's gonna vote for the first time that she gets to vote for. She and I speak about it all the time, and that's what I tell her. Like, what do you care about? You care about LGBTQ plus issues? Cool, look into that. Look who's supporting that, and so. Spend as much time as you can,
Shout out to Gen Z. You're going to save us, hopefully, the planet and everything else.
I'm telling you, my niece is 17. We've been talking about politics since she was like 14.
Yeah.
She's pretty dope. And I think that she's a reflection of her generation. They're ready to,
Take it to the streets.
take it to the streets, take it to
to
the
the
voting ballot,
Yeah.
take it
Everywhere.
to the schools, take it everywhere, take it to social media, They really are quite revolutionary, and I'm very proud of, that generation doing what they can and doing what they do best, which is disrupt shit and, get creative. So
No business as usual.
no business as usual.
Not at all.
Yeah, again, if you're young and you're listening, if you're like my niece and you're interested, but you don't know where to start, talk to people around you, talk to people that you look up to, and look up the issues that matter to you and start there.
And yeah, I mean, that's like a really cool way to end it. But I'm just going to say, too, that a lot of the work that we do, we have to talk to some legislators and some policymakers that we may not agree with on everything. But they're empowered, and we have to fight for what we need to fight for because our community is depending on it,
We put them there, we can take them out.
Exactly.
And they need to understand that.
Yeah.
Every politician is there because the people put them there. And the people can take them out. And so maybe you voted for someone and you don't like what they're doing now, make it known.
Yeah. And I think if people have been following us on social media, they know exactly who we're talking about.
Hell yeah.
And there's a lot more to come on that front too. But everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode, and we hope you stay tuned for more for the rest of 2024. There's so much to look out for, and have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.